The death toll from the devastating series of earthquakes in Turkey and Syria has crossed 5,000 already. The World Health Organization says that the toll could potentially be near the 20,000 mark. You're watching Around the World, and here we begin with a story of hope amidst all the despair. In the midst of calamity, a mother gave birth to a baby, and despite being under the collapsed heap of a building, the baby survived and was pulled out alive by rescue workers. Even as tremors and aftershocks continued, rescuers and residents alike in Turkey and Syria searched through the cold night, hoping to pull more survivors from the rubble. Thousands of search and rescue personnel, firefighters, and about 3,500 soldiers and medics have been working around the clock, lifting and clearing the rubble along with the locals, even as seismic activity continued to rattle the region. The aftershocks making efforts more dangerous. Tens of thousands who were left homeless in Turkey and Syria faced a night out in the cold. Survivors cried out for help from within mountains of debris as first responders reacted amidst rain and snow. Workers carefully pulled away slabs of concrete and reached for bodies as desperate families waited for news of their loved ones. In Malatya in Turkey, people were filmed running from a tall building as it began collapsing. One woman was brought out alive from the rubble in Diyarbakir in Turkey on Monday evening. Injured people were transported from ambulances to a Turkish military ship in the Hatay province of the country. The ship was transporting survivors to hospitals in the port city of Mersin. Many buildings sustained serious damages in Adana, a Turkish province less than 200 kilometers from the epicenter of the quakes. Residents at damaged buildings with broken off windows or cracks in the walls have been evacuated. Many chose to spend the night in temporary shelters on a cold night rather than head back home. The earthquakes further traumatized Syria's war-torn Aleppo town. Poor local infrastructure has hindered the search for survivors from collapsed buildings. Dozens of people were taking shelter in a Christian convent in Syria. Monday's earthquake is believed to be the strongest in Turkey since the eastern Erzincan province quake back in the year 1939, measuring 7.9 on the Richter scale. It killed 33,000 people. Now, countries across the world have rushed to dispatch aid, personnel and equipment to help the rescue efforts in Turkey and Syria, and India has been right at the forefront. India was prompt in its decision to support the Islamic countries. India's first C-17 aircraft with aid and personnel has reached Adana in Turkey. On board were more than 50 NDRF search and rescue personnel, specially trained dog squads, drilling machines, relief material, medicines and other necessary utilities. The Indian Army is mobilizing a field hospital and a medical team to Turkey. 2 more C-17s are planned for Turkey as well. The Prime Ministers of Australia and New Zealand have both pledged aid and support to those affected by the earthquakes. Albanese said that his government would provide an initial 10 million Australian dollars in humanitarian aid, whereas Hipkins, the Prime Minister of New Zealand, has pledged aid worth $1.5 million. South Korea's President Yoon Suk-yeol pledged $5 million in support for Turkey, describing Turkey as a brother nation that sent aid during the Korean War in the 1950s. Even the president of war-torn Ukraine, Volodymyr Zelensky, sent his condolences and offered support in the rescue operations. Meanwhile, A Chinese relief team was also pressed into action. The United States is coordinating immediate assistance to NATO member Turkey, including teams to support the search and rescue efforts. In California, nearly 100 Los Angeles County firefighters and structural engineers, along with specially trained dogs, were being sent to Turkey. Special rescue brigades from the Mexican Army, Navy, and Red Cross departed to Turkey to aid in the rescue efforts. Germany too has prepared to send tents, generators, heaters and other technical equipment to help victims of the earthquake and to support rescue teams for 10 days. Greece sent a contingent including a team of 21 rescuers, 2 rescue dogs, a special rescue vehicle, a structural engineer, 5 doctors and seismic planning experts as well. Hundreds of volunteers, rescue workers and NGO members rushed to the Istanbul airport to join the aid efforts in southern Turkey. Shifting focus away from Turkey and Syria to Peru, where at least 35 people have been killed and many are missing after deadly landslides hit the South American nation that has already been rocked by anti-government protests for almost 2 months now. The mudslides in Peru were triggered by incessant rains that swept mud, water and rocks into several villages across southern Peru. Videos surfaced showing the extent of the damage, with people being rescued even as they get pulled by the current. People collected the dead bodies of their loved ones retrieved from the debris. Among the dead were 5 people who were riding in a van that was pushed into a river by a surge of mud. Local officials appealed for heavy machinery to be sent in to clear debris, blocking 3 kilometers of a crucial road. An estimated 630 homes were unusable after the landslides, which also hit bridges, irrigation canals and roads. Constant rains are frequent in February in Peru and often cause deadly landslides. More disasters, and this one in the United States of America. Around 50 cars derailed in a fiery train crash on Friday night last week in Ohio near the Pennsylvania state line. Of the 50 carriages of the train, 10 were carrying hazardous materials and chemicals. Fortunately, no injuries to crew, residents or first responders were reported. Authorities in Ohio have then begun to release toxic chemicals from 5 carriages of the derailed train to reduce the threat of an explosion. The planned process began only on Monday. Flames and black smoke billowed high into the sky from the derailment site on Monday afternoon. The Ohio Emergency Management Agency confirmed the controlled release of toxic chemicals was underway. Ohio's Governor Mike DeWine ordered residents near the site to evacuate immediately.
We're urging everyone in this area, actually ordering them to leave. We are again sending out the Ohio State Highway Patrol, sheriffs, and other law enforcement to this area.
Up next, the United Nations' chief fears that the world is heading towards a quote-unquote wider war over Russia's invasion of Ukraine, and he called on the world to renounce nuclear weapons.
Nuclear-armed countries must renounce the first use of these unconscionable weapons. In fact, they must renounce any use, anytime, anywhere. The so-called tactical use of nuclear weapons is an absurdity. We are at the highest risk in decades of a nuclear war that could start by accident or design. And we need to end the threat posed by 13,000 nuclear weapons held in arsenals around the world.
The Secretary General of the United Nations laid out his priorities for the year 2023 in a gloomy speech at the United Nations General Assembly that focused on Russia's invasion of Ukraine, the climate crisis and extreme poverty, where Antonio Guterres noted that top scientists and security experts had moved the Doomsday Clock to just 90 seconds to midnight just last month, the closest the Doomsday Clock has ever been to signaling the complete annihilation of humanity. The Doomsday Clock was created by a Washington-based science-oriented advocacy group called the Bulletin of Atomic Scientists. The advocacy group started in 1947 to use a clock to symbolize the likelihood of people doing something to end humanity altogether. It moved the clock 10 seconds closer than last year, making it the closest it has ever been to striking 12, just 90 seconds before midnight. With Russia's invasion of Ukraine and the specter of nuclear weapons use, the Earth is now closest to Armageddon than ever before. Meanwhile, the first shipment of Ukraine-bound Bradley fighting vehicles have been loaded onto a ship at an undisclosed location in the US. The Ukrainian General Staff shared this footage. More than 60 Bradley fighting vehicles have been sent to Ukraine from the US as part of the US's nearly $3 billion military aid agreement it announced earlier this year. The shipment is part of a military aid package that Washington announced in tandem with Germany, allowing the delivery of its Leopard tanks to Ukraine. Now, although they are seen as a major boost for Ukraine's war effort against Russia, the Bradleys are unlikely to make it to the battlefield immediately. It will take months to train Ukrainian soldiers on them and establishing logistical chains to support them as well. And finally, let's end this with a symbol of peace, prosperity, and new beginnings. Taiwan celebrated its Sky Lantern Festival. Thousands of lanterns lit up the night sky in New Taipei city of Taiwan as hundreds gathered to celebrate the start of the Year of the Rabbit after the Lunar New Year celebrations. People wrote their wishes on these red paper lanterns. Red lanterns symbolize prosperity, peace, and good fortune in South Asian culture. Folklore says that earlier sky lanterns were used as warfare and military protection tools. The paper sky lanterns were used to send SOS messages when surrounded by enemy troops. But here our prayers with these lanterns are for a better tomorrow unto all the families who lost their loved ones and to all those affected by all the destruction happening across the globe. And that's all we have time for in this edition of Around the World. Thank you so much for watching. Keep it with News 9 Plus.